Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtabhraishu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 1. The Advent of Lord Krishna. King Parikshit said, My dear Lord, you have elaborately described the dynasties of both the moon god and the sun god, with the exalted and wonderful character of their kings. Purport. At the end of the 9th canto, 24th chapter, Shukadeva Goswami summarized the activities of Krishna. He spoke of how Krishna had personally appeared to reduce the burden of the world. King Parikshit said, My dear Lord, you have elaborately described the dynasties of both the moon god and the sun god with the exalted and wonderful character of their kings. Purport. At the end of the 9th canto, 24th chapter, Shukadeva Goswami summarized the activities of Krishna. What did he do?
Summarize the activities of Krishna.
Why did he do that? Where else are the pastimes of Krishna summarized? Where else are they summarized in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Karvinda knows.
It's when Uddhav is describing to Vidura the pastimes in the 3rd canto, 2nd and 3rd chapter, I believe.
That's true. That's very true. 3rd canto. At the end of the 9th canto, 24th chapter, Shukadeva Goswami summarized the activities of Krishna. He spoke of how Krishna had personally appeared to reduce the burden of the earth, how he had manifested his pastimes as a householder, and how, soon after his birth, he had transferred himself to the Braj Bhumi. He had transferred himself to Braj Bhumi Leela. Parikshit Maharaj, being naturally a devotee of Krishna, wanted to hear more about Lord Krishna. Therefore, to encourage Shukadeva Goswami to continue speaking about Krishna and give further details, he thanked Shukadeva Goswami for having described the activities of Krishna in brief. Therefore, to encourage Shukadeva Goswami to continue speaking about Krishna and give further details, he thanked Shukadeva Goswami for having described the activities of Krishna in brief. Shukadeva Goswami had said, Jatogata pitrir grahad rajam iditarto hatva rupam shutashitani kruto rudhara utpadyateshu purusha krutubi samije atmanam atma nigamam patayanjaneshu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, known as Leela Purushottam, appeared as the son of Vasudeva, but immediately left his father's home and went to Vrindavan to expand his loving relationships with his confidential devotees. In Vrindavan, the Lord killed many demons, and afterward he returned to Dwarka, where, according to Vedic principles, he married many wives, who were the best of women, begot through them hundreds of sons, and performed sacrifices for his own worship to establish the principles of householder life. From the Bhagavatam 9:24-66. The Yadu dynasty belonged to the family descending from Soma, the moon god. Although the planetary systems are so arranged that the sun comes first before the moon, Parikshit Maharaj gave more respect to the dynasty of the moon god, the Soma Vamsha, because in the Yadava dynasty descending from the moon, Krishna had appeared. Please fix the gain. There are two different Kshatriya families of the royal order, one descending from the king of the moon planet and the other descending from the king of the sun. Whenever the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, he generally appears in a Kshatriya family because he comes to establish religious principles and the life of righteousness. According to the Vedic system, verse... Go ahead, belt it out. Something.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sangsthapanami shambhavami yuga yuga.
Thank you. Bengali Sanskrit. According to the Vedic system, the Kshatriya family is the protector of the human race. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Ramachandra, he appeared in the Surya Vamsha, the family descending from the sun god, and when he appeared as Lord Krishna, he did so in the Yadu dynasty, or Yadu Vamsha, whose descent was from the moon god. In the 9th canto, 24th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a long list of the kings of the Yadu Vamsha. All the kings in both the Soma Vamsha and the Surya Vamsha were great and powerful, and Maharaj Parikshit praised them very highly. Rajnyam Chobhaya Vamshanam Charitam Paramadbhutam. Nonetheless, he wanted to hear more about the Soma Vamsha because that was the dynasty in which Krishna had appeared. The supreme abode of the personality of Godhead Krishna is described in the Brahma Samhita as the abode of Chintamani. Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpaviksha lakshavriteshu surabhir abhipalayantam. The Vrindavan Dham on this earth is a replica of that same abode. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.20, in the spiritual sky there is another eternal nature transcendental to manifested and unmanifested matter. Verse?
Parastasmattu bhavanyo.
Sing.
Parastasmattu bhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yatsu sarveshu bhuteshu nachyastu na vinashyati.
The manifested world can be seen in the form of as many stars and planets, such as the sun and moon, but beyond this is the unmanifested, which is imperceptible to those who are embodied. And beyond this unmanifested matter is the spiritual kingdom, which is described in Bhagavad Gita as supreme and eternal. That kingdom is never annihilated. Although material nature is subject to repeated creation and annihilation, that spiritual nature remains as it is eternally. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that spiritual nature, the spiritual world, is described as Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, or Vrajdham. The elaborate description of the above-mentioned shloka from the 9th canto, Jato Gata Pitrir Grihad, will be found here in the 10th canto. Text 2. O best of Munis, you have also described the descendants of Yadu, who are very pious and strictly adherent to religious principles. Now, if you will, kindly describe the wonderful, glorious activities of Lord Vishnu or Krishna, who appeared in that Yadu dynasty with Baladev, his plenary expansion. Purport. The Brahma Samhita 5.1 explains that Krishna is the origin of the Vishnu Tattva. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. Yasyaika nishvasita kala matavalambya Jivanti loma vilajaja kajananata Vishnur mahansa iha yasya kala vishesho Govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. The Brahmas, the heads of the innumerable universes, live only for the duration of one breath of Mahavishnu. I worship Govinda, the original Lord, of whom Mahavishnu is but a portion of a plenary portion. Govinda, Krishna, is the original personality of Godhead. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Even Lord Mahavishnu, who by his breathing creates many millions upon millions of universes, is Lord Krishna's Kala Vishesha, or plenary portion of a plenary portion. Mahavishnu is a plenary expansion of Sankarsana, who is a plenary expansion of Narayan. Narayan is a plenary expansion of the Chaturvyuha, and the Chaturvyuha are plenary expansions of Baladev, the first manifestation of Krishna. Therefore, when Krishna appeared with Baladev, all the Vishnu Tattvas appeared with him. Maharaj Parikshit requested Shukadeva Goswami to describe Krishna and his glorious activities. Another meaning may be derived from this verse as follows. Although Shukadeva Goswami was the greatest Muni, he could describe Krishna only partially, Angshena, for no one can describe Krishna fully. It is said that Anantadev has thousands of heads, but although he tries to describe Krishna with thousands of tongues, his descriptions are still incomplete. Text 3. The Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, the cause of the cosmic manifestation, appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. Please tell me elaborately about his glorious activities and character from the beginning to the end of his life. Purport. In this verse, the words Kritavan Yani indicate that all the different activities Krishna performed while present on earth are beneficial to human society. If religionists, philosophers, and people in general simply hear the activities of Krishna, they will be liberated. We have described several times that there are two kinds of Krishna Katha, represented by Bhagavad Gita, spoken personally by Krishna about himself, and Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Shukadeva Goswami about the glories of Krishna. Anyone who becomes even slightly interested in Krishna Katha is liberated. Kirtana deva Krishnasya mukta sangha param rajet. Simply by chanting or repeating Krishna Katha, one is liberated from the contamination of Kali Yuga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised, Jare dako tare kaha Krishna Upadesh. This is the mission of Krishna consciousness, to hear about Krishna and thus be liberated from material bondage. So Prabhupada mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that just by hearing about Krishna, one becomes liberated. Where does it say that? I'm going to maybe need that table. Just a verse from the Bhagavad Gita that tells how by the process of hearing about Krishna, one becomes liberated. Can you give him the microphone?
Maya Saktamana Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashraya Asamshayam Samagramham Yata Gyasyasi Touch Chinu.
7.1. We'll say it together. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Sakta Mana Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashayaha Asamshayam Samagramam Yatagyasasi Tashrinu. Translation is together. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Now hear, O son of Pratha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Purport. In the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the living entity has been described as non-material spirit, soul, capable of elevating himself to self-realization by different types of yogas. At the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. Verse? Yoginam api sarvesham madgatanantaratmana shadhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely, but not otherwise. Impersonal Brahmajyotir, or localized Paramatma realization, is not perfect knowledge of the absolute truth because it is partial. Full and scientific knowledge is Krishna, and everything is revealed to the person in Krishna consciousness. In complete Krishna consciousness, one knows that Krishna is ultimate knowledge beyond any doubts. Different types of yoga are only stepping stones on the path of Krishna consciousness. One who takes directly to Krishna consciousness automatically knows about the Brahmajyotir and Paramatma in full. By practice of Krishna consciousness yoga, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations with paraphernalia. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. What are all of them? Shravanam. I'm going to make the shlokas a little lower. One should therefore begin yoga practice as directed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. The Lord therefore says to Arjuna, "Touch Shrinu," or hear from me. No one can be a greater authority than Krishna, and therefore by hearing from him one receives the greatest opportunity to become a perfectly Krishna-conscious person. One has therefore to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna, and not from a non-devotee upstart, puffed up with academic education. What's an upstart? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. Do you have it? Okay, you're not supposed to hear from one of these. Let's hear the definition.
To jump up as to one's feet. To jump up suddenly is upstart. It was first used in the 14th century. And simple definition, a person who has recently begun an activity, becomes successful, etc., and who does not show proper respect for older and more experienced people.
So don't hear from upstarts. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this process of understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, of the Absolute Truth, is described in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto as follows. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtanaha Rityantaksto Hyabadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam Nashtapraeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tadarajastamo Bhava Kamalobhadayaschaye Cheta iter anavitam stitam sattve prasidati evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya chayate vidyate hridaya krantish chijante sarva samshayaha yante chasya karmani drishta eva manishvare. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna dwelling in everyone's heart acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. What's avarice? When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. So you can become free from avarice, but I'd like to know what it is. Avarice.
I also thought envy, but the definition is different.
Tell us.
Yeah, it says excessive or insatiable desire for wealth or gain, greediness.
For ghee? I thought you said for insatiable appetite for ghee. Okay, keep going. I want to hear the etymology, please.
They have given a very nice history for the word avarice. A more formal synonym for greed, avarice has a long, if uncomplicated, history in English. Chaucer, in his 14th century, the avarice with covetise, a now obsolete word that means covetousness. Covetise is to covet such things as thou hast not, and avarice is to withhold and keep such things as thou hast without rightful need. So,
Keeping the things one has without rightful need.
And Shakespeare uses it in Macbeth with this there grows in my most ill-composed affection such a staunchless avarice that, were I king, I should cut off the nobles for their lands, desire his jewels and this other's house, and any more having would be as a sauce to make me hunger more.
What's the origin of the word? Where does it come from?
Middle English, from Anglo-French, from the Latin avaritia, from avarice, avaricious, from avere, which means to crave.
To crave. Well, that's not good, unless you're craving Krishna Katha. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga tears the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of asamshayam samagram, understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth, Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. And that was in response to the question about by hearing we attain liberation. And so far, we'll just take a few reflections of what we've heard so far. Anything that we've read or talked about so far that's stuck in your mind?
I was actually connecting this by hearing, we attain liberation with what Maharaj said in the earlier in his thing, that if you're not humble, then your potency to hear goes away. So you have to be humble to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was a point.
Yeah, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Trinadapi Sunichena.
And we were discussing the other evening on Balaram's appearance day that there are various anartas. There are, the demons are iconic. They represent various anartas that are within the heart, and those that Balaram kills require exert oneself to remove them. And one of the ways in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that one has to prepare or exert oneself is to become intensely and deeply humble. That opens the way to removing those obstacles. Gandharvika?
It's just stunned to hear that the Prabhupada says the mission of Krishna consciousness is to hear about Krishna. And then you also read 7.1 where Prabhupada elaborates how bhakti severs a material affection, because usually people say that you should have knowledge and detachment, which is very difficult, but those are byproducts of bhakti. So even the difficult things become easy in a more natural way simply by hearing about Krishna.
I liked what you first said about the mission of Krishna consciousness, to hear Krishna. Someone, what's your mission? To hear about Krishna. Because everything else happens naturally after that, hearing about Krishna. And Rupa Goswami says, Tanama Rupa Charitari Sukirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasana Manasinyoja Rajetana Ragi Jananugami Kalam Nayeda Kilamityupadesha Saram. That by organizing one's life around this mission to hear about Krishna, then one gradually comes to live in Vrindavan, actually develops an intense attraction for a particular resident in Vrindavan, and then begins to follow in the footsteps of that resident. And that's the only way to come to the position of Vraj Bhakti, is to follow in the footsteps of the residents there. And that occurs naturally as one develops more and more affinity for hearing about Krishna, because it's non-different from Krishna. What else?
In relation to that, where should we hear about Krishna from? We should hear about Krishna only from Krishna or his pure devotees. We should not hear from an academic upstart who's puffed up with pride.
What is an upstart anyway?
Who jumps, who's very enthusiastic, who have learned recently and who doesn't respect the elders.
Whoa, interesting. Thank you very much. What else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. It's very hopeful that we read in the purport, and that tells that all the unwanted desires of the heart, it's taken care. So just like Krishna killed many demons, so when we give oral reception to Krishna, he appears in our heart and he removes all the things that are bothering us so much. Yeah, lust and avarice are diminished. So that is automatically taken care. Just by, on our own we may fail, we are failing time and again, but when we give oral reception to Krishna, then care of that. That was very hopeful to hear.
What is avarice anyway?
Greed, crave, I think we heard.
To crave? Okay.
I was just looking at another verse which talks about hearing. 13.26. It says that again there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth.
Such a nice citation you made. Let's read the Sanskrit together, because this is a choice verse. I'll say, please repeat. Anye tvevam ajanantaha Shrutvanebhya upasate Te tarantyeva Mrityum Shruti Parayanaha. And the purport is, this verse is particularly applicable to modern society because in modern society there is practically no education in spiritual matters. People may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there is a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, put great stress to hearing, because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress. Especially according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age, no one needs to change his position. Verse, Jnane prayasa mudapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukharitam bhavati abhartam stane stita shtikatam danovan manobir ye prayaso jitatiso pyasitais trilokyam. Actually, it's Lord Brahma's verse, but Lord Chaitanya personally stamped this verse as acceptable. The Lord Chaitanya said that in this age, no one needs, excuse me, did I miss a sentence? The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya said that in this age, no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure, hear from him about self-realization and follow in his footsteps, one will be gradually elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate, although the common man is often not as so-called philosophers. Faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back home, back to Godhead. Very hopeful, isn't it? And also, it's altogether accessible. Everyone has access to this through the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and there are pure devotees all over the world that one can associate with and hear about Krishna. What else?
I was just going to comment on this verse that this verse is kind of like a one vote against the upstarts, because upstarts don't want to hear, and this one is about people who just hear even though they don't have.
We're voting against the upstarts in favor of the sincere hearers. Submissive hearing is the trait of our sampradaya and the way in which the message is imbibed and then passed on through the process of submissive hearing. What else? Yes?
Actually, in the context of purification by taking shelter of Krishna through hearing, I wanted to refer one verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, 3.2.35. It says, Kamadinam katina katida palita durnideshas tesham jata mayina karuna traponopasanti utsitchaitan atha yadupate sampraptam labdha buddhis tam ayata saranam abhayam mam niyuktatma dase. O my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted of lusty desires. Although I have rendered them so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I even desired to give them up. O my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, Recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come up to you to surrender myself lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. So today being Janmashtami, we can actually take shelter of Krishna to appear in our heart and destroy.
So tell again why you brought that verse into evidence.
The context is that in the purport we are reading that when we give oral reception to Krishna through hearing, then Krishna, the lusty desires and the other unwanted desires, they go away. So here, basically, Rupa is in this sloka is telling that these desires, we have been servant to these desires for many lifetimes, and they are merciless masters. But when we take shelter of Krishna here, when we surrender to Him, so in this case, surrender is through hearing, and then Krishna removes this obstacle.
Thank you. This verse mentions the ones you just quoted, that Labdha Buddhi, the devotee says that I've gained my intelligence. And throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this Buddhi Yoga, and that one has to conquer the lower self by the higher self. At the end of the 3rd chapter, Krishna says, Evam Buddhi Param Buddhva Samstabhya Paramatmana Jahishatram Mahabaho Kamarupam Durasadam. And that is that one has to develop this intelligence so that one can maintain one's integrity, even as senses, the mind, are demanding that I degrade myself. And interestingly, yesterday I was reading in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam about how the senses are in the mind, and the mind is within the sense objects are within the senses, and the senses are within the mind. They're intimately related, so much so that one shouldn't be surprised that the senses immediately gravitate towards their objects in this material world. And ultimately, it's a concoction within the mind. I'm imagining that I'm enjoying these various objects, but through this process of hearing Krishna Katha, one can actually rise above this propensity and come to the point of gaining one's real spiritual intelligence. This is going to fall. It's not properly situated. And one can conquer the lower self by the higher self. And now, Giriraj Maharaj has something to say on this subject.
On the subject of Shravanam, and that the mission of Krishna consciousness is to hear Shravanam. Oh, in 1971, Srila Prabhupada sent Tamal Krishna Goswami and me from Bombay, put on the first Calcutta Pandal. And so we erected a huge Pandal at Chaurangi Maidan to accommodate 20,000 people. Some days 30,000 people came. But Calcutta was very much in the mood of communism. There were Naxalites, and the mood and the press were in the mood of communism. So before the Pandal program began, some press people came and challenged Srila Prabhupada that, you're spending so much money on this big arrangement, and what is the purpose of it? The idea was you could spend the money for poor people or something, and why are you spending so much money on the big arrangement? And Srila Prabhupada said that the purpose of this big arrangement is to give people a chance to hear. And in fact, this big arrangement has come about from hearing. Some, young men and women heard the message of Krishna, and now from their hearing, this whole big arrangement has come about. And the purpose of the arrangement is to give people a chance to hear. That's all.
Yeah, once when we were talking about improving the Sunday program here at ISV, Vaisesika Shekhar Prabhu, who had more or less been leading the program for some time, practically single-handedly. And there were several of us who were thinking, well, it needs to be modernized and brought up to a certain level in order to be substantial. And I think in the course of the conversation, I think we got carried away and somebody said, nothing's really happening with this Sunday program. And he became incredulous. He said, nothing is happening? What do you mean nothing is happening? He said, people are coming here and they're hearing and they're chanting and they're taking prasadam. And it was a revelation through his mouth, hearing that, and the similar principle that wherever this process of hearing is going on, that people are improving, their lives are being touched by Krishna directly. I was impressed once when we were in the early days of ISV. I think we were in the Grihastha ashram. We used to have a Grihastha ashram here, a house where all the Grihasthas lived. And Jayapataka Maharaj had been visiting. He was visiting at the time, and he began speaking about the Gita Mahatmya. And in the Gita Mahatmya, there are stories about the miraculous effects of hearing one chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And there was a story about a man who had died, but because he had heard the Bhagavad Gita, one chapter, I think it was chapter 8, that he had come back alive again. And each one of the chapters of Gita Mahatmya glorifies one of the chapters of the Bhagavad Gita and tells the miraculous effects of chanting that. And it impressed upon me that there is something beyond my perception that's taking place. The transcendental vibration is entering the ear and into the heart. And another analogy for that was when I was at the Rath Yatra in San Francisco 5 years ago, and it was a very foggy, cold, cloudy day. So I thought, I don't need a hat. And the next day, I should have worn a hat because I was severely sunburned. And then I looked it up online and found out that through the cloud cover, there are rays that I can't see that are coming through, that are actually burning the skin. And then I connected that to hearing and chanting, and how I may not perceive the effects right away of the hearing and chanting, but the effect is there nonetheless, because the sound vibration is fully potent. Therefore, in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami says, Apana samsruti yanama vivishogranan tatasadyo vimucheta yabhibheti swayam vayam. Can I see that verse? Chapter 1, I think it's text number 11. And, right? And in this verse, which we'll see in 5 seconds or less, or your money back. Yeah, it's Bhagavatam. Sutta Goswami says there's no difference at all between Krishna and his name, and therefore first canto, first chapter, 13th verse, try. 14th verse. I guess I got to give your money back now. That's a good one too. Puri Buri Karmani. This is it. Let's have a look at it. We'll say it. I'll say, please repeat. Apana samsritim koram. Yanama vivashogranan. Tata cheta.
sahajo vimuchetya.
Yad bipeti swayam bhayam.
Viveti swayam bhayam.
Let's say the translation together. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. Prabhupada writes, Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, the absolute personality of Godhead, is the supreme controller of everything. Therefore, there is no one in creation who is not afraid of the rage of the Almighty. Great asuras like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, others who were very powerful living entities were all killed by the personality of Godhead. And the Almighty Vasudeva has empowered his name with the powers of his personal self. I'll read that again. And the Almighty Vasudeva has empowered his name with the powers of his personal self. Another parallel line for that? Altogether? Nam namakari bahudani sarva shaktis.
Tatrapitani amita
Smaranena kala. That's it. Everything is related to him and everything has its identity in him. It is stated herein that the name of Krishna is feared even by fear personified. This indicates that the name of Krishna is non-different from Krishna. Therefore, the name of Krishna is as powerful as Lord Krishna himself. There it is in black and white. Smoking gun. There is no difference at all. Anyone, therefore, can take advantage of the holy names of Lord Sri Krishna, even in the midst of the greatest dangers. The transcendental name of Krishna, even though uttered unconsciously or by force of circumstances, can help one obtain freedom from the hurdle of birth and death. And throughout the Bhagavatam, there are such statements, and then there are other statements that come along and say, well, they don't come along and say, someone says them, but and that is that what to speak of someone who great attention hears and chants about Krishna. If someone accidentally chants Krishna's name or incidentally hears about Krishna, as is mentioned in the beginning of the 10th canto, that there are three kinds of people who are purified by the holy name, and that is, or by the Krishna Katha, those who speak it, who hear it, and who's the third party? Those who speak, those who hear, and everybody else in between who happens to hear about it. Okay, so we're continuing now from the Bhagavatam, and we're on text number 4. Nirvrtatarshe rupagiyamana
Nirvrtatarshe rupagiyamana
Bhava Shadach Chotra Mano Birama Uttama Shloka Gunanuvada Puman Virajeta Vina Pashugna. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system. That is conveyed from spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Purport. In India, it is the practice among the general populace to hear about Krishna either from Bhagavad Gita or from Srimad Bhagavatam, in order to gain relief from the disease of repeated birth and death. Although India is now fallen, when there is a message that someone will speak about Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, thousands of people still gather to hear. This verse indicates, however, that such recitation of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam must be done by persons completely freed from material desires, nivrittatarshai. Everyone within this material world, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, is full of material desires for sense enjoyment, and everyone is busy in sense gratification. But when thus engaged, one cannot fully understand the value of Krishna Katha, either in the form of Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. If we hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from liberated persons, this hearing will certainly free us from the bondage of material activities, but hearing Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by a professional reciter cannot actually help us achieve liberation. Krishna Katha is very simple. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As he himself explains, Mattak parataram nanyat kinchirasti dhananjaya. O Arjuna, there is no truth to me. Simply by understanding this fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become a liberated person. But especially in this age, because people are interested in hearing Bhagavad Gita from unscrupulous persons who depart from the simple presentation of Bhagavad Gita and distort it for their personal satisfaction, they fail to derive the real benefit. There are big scholars, politicians, philosophers, and scientists who speak on Bhagavad Gita in their own polluted way, and people in general hear from them, being uninterested in hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee is one who has no other motive for reciting Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam than to serve the Lord. What is a devotee? Well, just to be the one word, what's it based on? Motive. It's a motive. Like in a law, it depends what your motive was when you're being tried for a particular offense, right? So motive is always important. And in this context, one's motive in hearing about Krishna or speaking about Krishna is vital. A devotee is one who has no other motive for reciting Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam than to serve the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore advised us to hear the glories of the Lord from a realized person, Bhagavat Parodiya Bhagavatastani. Unless one is personally a realized soul in the science of Krishna consciousness, a neophyte should not approach him to hear about the Lord, for this is strictly forbidden by Srila Sanatana Goswami, who quotes from the Padma Purana, Avaishnava mukod girnam putam harikatamritam Shravananaiva kartavyam sarpochishtam yatapaya. One should avoid hearing from a person not situated in Vaishnava behavior. A Vaishnava is Nivritta Trishna, that is, he has no material purpose, for his only purpose is to preach Krishna consciousness. So-called scholars, philosophers, and politicians exploit the importance of Bhagavad Gita by distorting its meaning for their own purposes. Therefore, this verse warns that Krishna Katha should be recited by a person who is Nivritta Trishna. Shukadeva Goswami epitomizes the proper recitation of Bhagavatam, and Parikshit Maharaj, who purposefully left his kingdom and family prior to meeting death, epitomizes the person fit to hear it. A qualified reciter of Srimad Bhagavatam gives the right medicine, bhavaushadhi, for the conditioned souls. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to train qualified preachers to recite Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita throughout the entire world, so that people in general, in all parts of the world, may take advantage of this movement and thus be relieved of the threefold miseries of material existence. You have a comment?
Well, just one thought about bhavoshadi, just a personal association. At one stage, I became very sick in India, and Prabhupada wrote me a letter saying that your body is very important. It is dedicated to Krishna, so you must take care of it. And the best remedy is to follow the doctor's prescription, along with chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, because chanting Hare Krishna is bhavoshadi, the cure for all material diseases. the Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to train qualified preachers to recite Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita throughout the entire world, so that people in general in all parts of the world may take advantage of this movement and thus be relieved of the threefold miseries of material existence. So we are being trained here, first by hearing, and then after hearing properly one should repeat. Shravanam Kirtanam. Srila Prabhupada would say that one who hears nicely, he will be able to speak nicely. So we're actually all being trained here to be able to recite the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world. For our benefit, certainly, and for the benefit of people who hear us. And we begin from a very early stage. You don't have to be very advanced in age or knowledge, but if one has, repeats the message without any personal motive or duplicity, one can affect one's audience. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada gave the example of a young girl named Saraswati, who at the time was maybe 4 years old. She was the daughter of Srila Prabhupada's secretary Shamsundar and Malati. And when, of course there were other concepts about when people would come to our apartment in Bombay, Saraswati would approach them and say, do you know who is Krishna? And then she would say, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada was pleased with her preaching. So anyone can do it from any age. It really just requires hearing and repeating what one has heard. And she also encouraged us to speak according to our realization. And even if our realization is simply that if you chant Hare Krishna, you feel better, you get relief from stress, or even if you take prasad, you feel blissful. Whatever your realization is, that will touch the heart of the audience. So it's such a simple process. You just hear and repeat what you've heard. And it has great effects. And when people hear you and then they repeat what they've heard, it goes on and on and on and on without any limit. So we just have to do it. Srila Prabhupada commented on a cartoon in a magazine. And in the cartoon, an old lady and an old man were sitting together, and the lady was saying, chant, chant, chant. And her husband was replying, can't, can't. So with the same effort that he refused, can't, 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 he could have chanted. So this is just our misfortune, that it's so easy but we don't do it, or maybe maybe our envy. It's so easy, but we don't do it. But if we do it, the results are miraculous. The beneficial effects on ourselves and also on those who hear us. And Srila Prabhupada said that preaching is the best way to become Krishna conscious. Because when you preach, people will ask questions. And then to answer their questions, you have to think of Krishna. So it's the best way to become Krishna conscious. So just chant, chant, chant. And that follows if we hear, hear, hear. And that's why we're all here, to hear.
Let's take the opportunity to move up a little bit, fill in some of the gaps, if you don't mind, because more people are likely to come, and we want to make sure that they feel accommodated. Besides, it changes the dynamic when you move closer. The hearing becomes more accessible and potent. The instructions of Bhagavad Gita and the descriptions of Srimad Bhagavatam are so pleasing that almost anyone suffering from the threefold miseries of material existence will desire to hear the glories of the Lord from these books and thus benefit on the path of liberation. Two classes of men, however, will never be interested in hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are determined to commit suicide and those determined to kill cows and other animals for the satisfaction of their tongues. Although such persons may make a show of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam at a Bhagavat Saptaha, this is but another creation of the karmis, who cannot derive any benefit from such a performance. The word Pashugnat is important in this connection. Pashugna means butcher. Persons fond of performing ritualistic ceremonies for elevation to the higher planetary systems must offer sacrifices, yagyas, by killing animals. Lord Buddhadev therefore rejected the authority of the Vedas because his mission was to stop animal sacrifices, which are recommended in Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Nindasi yagya vedera shuti atam sadaya hridaya shutta pashugatam Keshavadrita Buddha Sharira Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare. Even though animal sacrifices are sanctioned in Vedic ceremonies, men who kill animals for such ceremonies are considered butchers. Butchers cannot be interested in Krishna consciousness, for they are already materially allured. Their only interest lies in developing comforts for the temporary body. Bhogaishvarya prasadhanam taya prahita chetasam Vyavasayatmika buddhi samadao navadhiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, give her the microphone. She'll say it in Bengali.
মানুষ্য জন্ম পাইয়া রাধা কৃষ্ণ না ভজিয়া জানিয়া শুনিয়া বিষ খাইনু।
Haribo! Anyone who is not Krishna conscious and who therefore does not engage in the service of the Lord is also Pashugna, for he is willingly drinking poison. Such a person cannot be interested in Krishna Katha because he still has a desire for material sense gratification. He is not Nivrita Trishna, As it is said, Trivargikaste Purusha Vimukha Hari Medasaha. Those interested in Trivarga, that is, in Dharma, Artha, and Kama, are religious for the sake of achieving a material position, gain better facilities for sense gratification. Such persons are killing themselves by willingly keeping themselves in the cycle of birth and death. They cannot be interested in Krishna consciousness. For Krishna Katha, topics about Krishna consciousness, there must be a speaker and a hearer, both of whom can be interested in Krishna consciousness if they are no longer interested in material topics. One can actually see how this attitude automatically develops in persons who are Krishna conscious. Although the devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement are quite young men, they no longer read material newspapers, magazines, and so on, for they are no longer interested in such topics. Nivritta tarshai. They completely give up the bodily understanding of life. For topics concerning Uttama Shloka, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master speaks and the disciple hears with attention. Unless them are free from material desires, they cannot be interested in topics of Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master and disciple do not need to understand anything more than Krishna, because simply by understanding Krishna and talking about Krishna, one becomes a perfectly learned person. Yasmin vignate sarvam evam vignatum bhavati, from the Mundaka Upanishad. The Lord sits within everyone's heart, and by the grace of the Lord, the devotee receives instructions directly from the Lord himself, who says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham vishto mataksmitir jnanam apohanam cha vedaisya sarvameva vejo vedanta krit veda videva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and awareness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Krishna consciousness is so exalted that one who is perfectly situated in Krishna consciousness, under the direction of the spiritual master, is fully satisfied by reading Krishna Katha, as found in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and similar Vedic literature. Since merely talking about Krishna is so pleasing, we can simply imagine how pleasing it is to render service to Krishna.
Again, relating this to personal experience, during that period in Calcutta, Srila Prabhupada was really keeping us very busy. In fact, after the success of the Pandal, he said we should have a Pandal like that every 2 weeks. And it took the whole temple 2 months, to put together that one. And at the end of the one, everyone was exhausted. So we were working very hard with pleasure. Hearing Krishna Katha is so pleasing, one can imagine how much pleasure there is in service. We were serving with pleasure. But I didn't have time to read, and it was weighing on my heart that I wasn't reading, and I was like feeling guilty or uneasy. I was feeling uneasy. And I came into Srila Prabhupada's room in the temple, and apparently, out of nowhere, Srila Prabhupada quoted this verse, Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Oh, here you get everyone to say the verses.
Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki.
And Srila Prabhupada said that by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or by serving the pure devotee. In other words, by hearing the book Bhagavat or serving the person Bhagavat, one gets the same result. And then he said, even if you never read the book Bhagavat, just by serving the person Bhagavat, all the truths of the book Bhagavat will be revealed to you. So this came to mind reading how Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that hearing is so pleasurable, one can imagine how much pleasure there is in rendering service. And rendering service to the pure devotee has the same effect as hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. But we should do both. Under extraordinary circumstances, we might not have time to read, but otherwise we should do both. The two are complementary. When I was quite a new devotee, I had heard somewhere along the line that if you're just eager to become Krishna conscious, that's all you need. And later on I came across this verse, Tatram lolyam eka mulam. But anyway, so in my innocence in those days, I said to Srila, I heard that if we are just eager to become Krishna conscious, that's as good as becoming Krishna conscious. So if that's the case, do we need to read books? And God replied, if you're eager to become Krishna conscious, why should you not be eager to read the books? And that service creates eagerness. And I'm referring to verses I'm sure you all know here from the first canto, second chapter, series of verses. And San Mahat Sevaya Vipra Vasudeva Kataruchi, that by serving a pure devotee one develops taste, Vasudeva Kataruchi, and then by that taste one will naturally want to hear Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam.
I want to comment about the Pashugna. And this verse, in this verse, Shukadeva Goswami mentions that those who are animal killers or killers of their own souls, they're committing suicide, won't be interested in Krishna Katha. And interestingly, the campaign of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so pervasive, and the Krishna Katha seems to be so powerful that even those persons who are engaged in those kinds of activities, who come in contact with Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, devotees and so forth, are becoming devotees in spite of their bad fortune of having become connected with those kinds of activities. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami says, Kiratahunandra pulda pulkasha abhira shumba yavana kasaraya yene cha papa yarapashraya shaya shudyanti tasmai prabha vishnave namaha, in which he names a series of classes of people who are outside the Varnashram system, who are considered fallen, and who are engaged in activities like animal killing and so forth. But Shukadeva also says that because of the power of Lord Vishnu coming through the pure devotees of the Lord, that even these people become purified. Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Pulkasha, Abhira, Shumbha, Yavana, members of the Kasa races and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisance him. And just thinking about what was also in the purport, mentioning how Buddha came to stop the animal sacrifices that were in the Vedas when we were writing this book, Our Family Business, and we were exercising the of our brains, thinking about ways to present various principles. There's this idea about how the Vedic priests at that time would sacrifice animals for the purpose of bringing them back to life. And they would do so by mantra and the efficacy of the mantra. But of course that was lost later on, and so the sacrifices were banned. But in this age, the message of Bhagavatam and the holy name that's coming down through the line of pure devotees is so potent that we also test the mantra by taking, first of all, one must test it on oneself to see if one could revive oneself from avarice, as we talked about before, and other lower qualities. I mean, one has to see if it actually works. And then one can take the mantra out. Even devotees have gone to, I hate even to mention the word, but this is just a fact, they've gone to places like slaughterhouses and butcher shops and distributed Krishna consciousness in those places. And rather than them being contaminated by going there, the people who are engaged in those kinds of very low activities become transformed. There are many examples of that, of people who have been in those kinds of situations, who came in contact with the representatives of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who heard the vibration and then became purified. So it reminds me that in the Gita, Krishna says that one should not preach the Bhagavad Gita to those who are not austere or devoted, and also that one should not disturb the minds of the ignorant by preaching Krishna consciousness. But then Prabhupada slips in the purport that devotees of the Lord are more kind, and therefore they take the risk to go out and introduce Krishna consciousness even to those who aren't interested, just so that they can help them come to the point of Krishna consciousness. It's coming.
Hare Krishna. Oh, sorry. On this point about service and hearing, in the middle to early 70s, Satsvarup Maharaj was in Dallas, and he wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada concerning serving and hearing. I didn't read the letter, so I can't exactly say what the question was, but I know the answer because Prabhupada wrote this very powerful letter to him. And in that letter he said, if one does not properly and sufficiently hear, then even if he's dressing the deities, it will be as if he's dressing dolls. In order to stress how important it is that we hear. And therefore, Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami, they say that all the different services become activated by the hearing and chanting. And as a matter of fact, they must be accompanied by the hearing and the chanting. Otherwise, they lose their transcendental quality.
Yeah, that's a stricture in our process of deity worship, that one must be preceded and followed by the chanting of the holy names. Continuing in the purport of 10.1.4, the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. Is that wrong? I missed a page? Yes, I did. When discourses on Krishna Katha take place between a liberated spiritual master and disciples, others also sometimes take advantage of hearing these topics and also benefit. These topics are the medicine to stop the repetition and death. The cycle of repeated birth and death, by which one takes on different type bodies again and again, is called bhava or bhava rog. What's it called? Bhava rog. Bhava rog. If anyone willingly or unwillingly hears Krishna Katha, his bhava rog, the disease of birth and death, will certainly stop. Therefore, Krishna Katha is called bhavaushadha, the remedy to stop the repetition of birth and death. Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Ji Ki Jai, Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Shri Shri Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande. What's it called? The remedy to stop birth and death? Sounds good, doesn't it? Bhavaushadhi. It's medicine. Bhavaushadha. Medicine that cures bhava. Bhavaushadha. It's a remedy to stop the repetition of birth and death. Look up remedy. Karmis or persons attached to materialist sense enjoyment generally cannot give up their material desire. But Krishna Katha is such a potent medicine that if one is induced to hear Krishna Kirtan, he will certainly be freed from this disease. That's another word, induce. How do you induce somebody to hear Krishna Kirtan? Do you have a remedy yet? Let's hear it. What's the remedy called? Bhavaushadhi. Okay, what's a remedy? Let's.
It's a medicine, application or treatment that relieves or cures a disease. Number 2, something that corrects or counteracts. Number 3, the legal means to recover a right or to prevent or obtain redress for a wrong.
In that verse, huh? Where does it come from?
Middle English, remedy, from Anglo-French, from Latin remedium, that is from re plus medere, which means to heal.
What?
To heal.
To heal? Medere.
Medere
means to heal.
Like that, yeah.
It means to correct something, or what else? You said in the beginning?
The legal means to recover a right.
Before that.
Something that corrects or counteracts.
Corrects or counteracts. That's important, isn't it? Didn't you ever feel like you wanted to correct your whatever track you were on? Or counteract various influences? This is it. I think we've got it. We've discovered it here. Bhavaushadhi. This is really it. To correct and counteract. Corrects and counteracts. Those are two really good words. But more, and sorry for getting too much into these words, but induce. This is an important word. We've looked at this one before, but this is an important point because this is sort of an active verb here. Prabhupada says, karmis or persons attached to material sense enjoyment generally cannot give up their material desires. That's a pretty hard situation to be in. To be in a situation where you have material desires and you're attached and can't give them up. But Krishna Katha is such a potent medicine that if one is induced to hear Krishna Kirtan, he will certainly be freed from this disease. What's the disease being mentioned? Particularly in this sentence. Being attached to material desires. To being attached to material sense enjoyment, which is generally not a good idea. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives advice, don't be attached. He says intelligent people aren't attached. Like for instance, it says, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga tukayonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. First he's talking about an intelligent person doesn't take part in material enjoyment. Why? Simple reason in the it has a beginning and an end. Once you start, you don't get to keep it. 3 big men come out of the room with shoes, take it away, and then beat you with, and then you have to give it up. And then also, he says that if you're attached to material enjoyment, you can't get on spiritual life. Where does he say that? Give him the mic.
भोगैश्वर प्रसक्तानां तया पृथक्चेतसां व्यवसायात्मका बुद्धि समाधौ न विधीयते.
Can you say a little bit about what that means? Tell us a little bit about the verse.
Pardon?
Can you say about the verse?
I cannot translate in English.
Yeah, what does
Can't
the
speak English,
verse
but he's
mean?
following everything perfectly.
Yeah, those who are attached to the sense gratification, they are not resolute in their purpose and they cannot focus.
Samadhau, navadiyate. They can't get that samadhi. They can't get absorbed. They're just distracted here, there, and everywhere. So here it is. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and who are bewildered by such a thing, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. And in the Bhagavatam, Narada says, Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjita jnanam alam niranjanam kutak punashashvara bhadram ishvare. The charpitam karma yarapyakaranam, that if one's practicing God consciousness but doesn't have a conception of achuta, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it doesn't look very good at all. What to speak of, he says, engaged just in material activities. That's just plain stupid. So it's not a good idea, and it's definitely an affliction. So back to where we were, and that is that the remedy to stop the repetition of birth and death. Karmis or persons attached to material sense enjoyment generally cannot give up their material desires. But Krishna Katha is such a potent medicine that if one is induced to hear Krishna Kirtan, he will certainly be freed from the disease. And that brings us all the way back to the word. This is going to astound you. It may change your life. So if you don't want that to happen, cover your ears at this point.
Induce, to move by persuasion or influence. To call forth or bring about by influence or stimulation. Use as an effect or cause. To cause the formation of something. To produce as an electrical current by induction. And then third one is to determine by induction, which means to infer from the particulars. So I was thinking to call forth or bring about by influence or stimulation.
Where does it come from?
Middle English, from Anglo-French, inducer. From Latin, inducere. From in plus ducere, which means lead.
To lead. Yeah, when you induce somebody, you lead them into the right conclusion. And there's this active nature of this verb that it's almost even a little aggressive, inducing people to do this. Like sometimes if you swallow something, it says right on the bottle, if you swallow any of this, induce vomiting. Don't induce vomiting. Inducing means that you really have to be active about something. Yes. She has a point.
In electrical engineering, the induction motor or induction means without touching, where you are just giving the voltage or current.
How do you do that?
Magnetic, with the creation of magnetic field.
OMG. Okay.
So I was saying that in the dictionary it also said that look at toe, the word toe.
Okay, but I want to hear the continuation of your metaphor. So how does that relate to trying to expand it? You're fired up about this. So how does it relate to this particular point about the chanting of the holy names?
For example, when devotees preach to others, they just, without the touch, just by their power magnetism, they attract them. And by telling them about Krishna, they attract them.
And just chanting. People come by and see the chanting, right?
Yes.
We talked the other day about one devotee who lives in Japan. He was walking through Harajuku Park, and he heard the devotees chanting. He wasn't thinking anything about it. I think he was having a beer or whatever. He got on the train. He went about 20 miles, and the name wouldn't go out of his head. So what happened to me? So he got back on the other train going the other direction, went back to the park and said, "What'd you do to me? What happened?" And then he became a devotee. But there is that point, and it was good in that definition of induce. It has to do with electricity, and our electronic engineer experts are telling us about how one can create the current even without touching it through magnetism. Induction. Very powerful. I'll just read these last two sentences again so we can savor them one more time. If anyone willingly or unwillingly hears Krishna Katha, his bhava rog, the disease of birth and death, will certainly stop. Can we have an example of that? Somebody who heard Krishna Katha unwillingly and then became? Yes?
The prostitute who was sent to seduce Haridas Thakur.
That's a good example. She went there, I mean, she didn't go there to hear Krishna Katha. She was on a kind of mission, but she became a devotee. Nice. Any others? Yeah.
Narada Muni, when he was in the womb of his mother, and Prahlad Maharaj, when he was in the womb, he heard Narada Muni speaking to his mother, and thus he became the great Prahlad Maharaj.
Another good one. Thank you very much. Excellent examples.
Shukadev Goswami, he was in the womb for a long time, and he was an impersonalist.
This is good.
Shukadev Goswami was actually an impersonalist. He was realized, fully realized, liberated soul inside the womb. So he decided, I don't think I want to come out into the material world, because if I do, I'll get attracted to material. So poor mother, he was there for like 16 years. So finally, Vyasadeva spoke to him, Bhagavatam and everything, and so finally he called Krishna, Vyasadeva. So Krishna came and convinced Shukadev to come out of the womb. He says, don't worry, you won't become attracted to the material energy. Oh, all right. And then he came out and he became the greatest reciter of the Bhagavatam ever.
Can I add an extension on that? So actually, after he came out, is described yaran anupetam apetakritam. He left as soon as he came out of the womb. He still he didn't want to become entangled in family life, even though his father was Vyasadeva. How detached is that? So he was in the forest, and according to the various Puranas, while he was in the forest, that his father, Vyasadeva, sent people out, students, some say students, others say workers, but to recite verses from the Bhagavatam. And noteworthy among them was a verse, Aho Bhakiyam Stanakalakutam, about how Krishna killed Putana, but he liberated her, even though she was an unwilling, got liberation. And when he heard the verses that were, his father actually induced him to come back to study the Bhagavatam more deeply. And so when he heard these verses when he was in the forest, his heart became attracted, and he realized, I'm a liberated soul, but I'm still attracted to this. So he came back, and then he became the great Shukadev Goswami. He was the great Shukadev Goswami, but he continued his great saga.
So
Yeah. Who was it?
One from Vaikuntha Nayak Prabhu.
Vaikuntha Nayak is online with us. It's
from
in the middle of
India.
the night there, yeah.
The dacoit who heard Bhagavatam class and went to Vrindavan to rob Krishna of his jewels. And he's giving that example for the question you asked.
Very good, yeah, very good.
And I also have one more after Mataji.
Okay, give her the mic.
Valmiki, who was also a dacoit.
He was tricked.
Yeah, and he spoke.
Is that inducement?
Yeah, like he could not speak. He could not say Ram. So Narad Muni asked him to speak Maram, Maram, Ram, and then just by hearing that.
Is there a legal case like somebody was induced something? Like it wasn't their idea, but somebody induced them somehow? Anyway, that was the case, that Narada Muni induced him to chant the holy names because he said, I can't, I'm too sinful, right? So he said, Mara Mara. And then back to you, Gandharvika, and then over to Mayapur.
So Jadu Thakur Prabhu says that he is very happy to hear that unwillingly hearing Krishna also works. So he will read to his sister every day, whether she wants it or not.
Oh, that's funny. And Prabhupada mentions in the introduction to the Upadeshamrita that when one starts the process of devotional service, even when one decides against it, he'll be forcibly dragged by the process. Mayapur?
I had heard this, one of the greatest Vaishnavacharya, Ramanujacharya's guru, Yamunacharya, he became a king for a certain period in his life, and being a king, he was into worldly matters. And his grandfather, on his deathbed, he instructed a Brahmin to go and get back Yamunacharya into spiritual world. And being a king, the Brahmin told Yamunacharya that I have a wealth for you, and he needed wealth for his kingdom. So the Brahmin took him for a long journey, and every day would read from Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And then Yamunacharya again, realized that I now understand what true wealth you are referring to. And he gave up his kingdom and became the famous Yamunacharya.
Bravo, well done. Thank you very much. Yes? Go ahead.
So this is from Naimisharanya Das, Prabhu.
Naimisaranya, wow. We have
Hare Krishna
great
Gurudev.
souls on today. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Gurudev, Danvat Pranams, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Happy Janmashtami to all of you. When we are to material sense enjoyment, our chanting is also inattentive. If our chanting is inattentive, then the Bhakti Lata creeper gets choked and the weeds start to grow rapidly. Question: how do we chant attentively so we can cut down the weeds and attachments to material sense enjoyment? In separation, your servant, Naimisharanya Das.
His question is, the basis of his question is that Bhogaishwarya Prashaktalam, that when your mind is too attached to sense gratification, the resolute determination doesn't take place. And so how can we chant attentively? Because if we chant inattentively, according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the other offenses flourish. And if we chant attentively, then the other offenses will be eradicated. Well, the first answer is that, as Srila Prabhupada said, practice makes perfect, even in spiritual life. So even if your mind has the tendency to wander, but with your intelligence, bring the mind back to the sound of the holy name. In fact, if chanting required one to be free from material attachments in the beginning, then hardly one would be able to make any progress, because pretty much everyone begins with material attachments. But the fact is that if you chant, then you will hear, and especially if you make the effort, and then that hearing, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, that will cleanse the heart of material misunderstandings and attachments. And Rupa Goswami also says in the Upadeshamrita that one may chant in the beginning without taste, because being influenced by avidya or ignorance, one identifies with the body, and therefore the chanting isn't sweet. That example of sugar candy. But if one very carefully and regularly, anudin, every day, chants as a medicine, we've been talking about medicine, so that chanting is a medicine. And by that careful chanting daily, that disease of ignorance, avidya, will be destroyed at the root, and then one will relish the sweetness of the holy name and qualities and pastimes of Krishna. Another thing, although often such a question is asked in relation to japa, but Srila Jiva Goswami says that kirtan especially has the ability to touch people's hearts and evoke spiritual sentiments. And so it may be easier to absorb your mind in kirtan, and then purifying your heart through kirtan will also help you your japa. Another fact is that quite often if someone is in distress, they chant with more feeling. And there's a saying in America that there are no atheists in the foxholes. Foxholes means like a position in an army. You're in the foxhole and people are firing on all sides. And there's no atheists in the foxhole because they're in a very precarious position, and in that dangerous situation, they naturally cry out to God. And so this again brings us to humility. If we feel how vulnerable we are and how dependent we are on the Lord, then we can chant with feeling, with attention, and with feeling. And one nice devotee made the point that if you think you're all right, of course Queen Kunti makes the same point in her prayers, that if you think you're all right, if there's a sense of complacency, then you won't be able to call on the name of the Lord with feeling. So this devotee made the point that if we think we are all right, materially or spiritually, then we won't be able to chant with sincere feeling. So we have to realize that we're not all right. That in fact, thinking that we're all right itself proves that we're not all right. So if you think you're all right, you know for sure you're in deep trouble. And then when you realize you're in a very precarious and helpless position, you can really call out with feeling. Another recommendation, and I didn't say it when Vaisesika asked everyone to move forward, because it would have been a little out of place, but he said when you move forward, like the katha has greater effect. And what I was thinking was that what's really happening is you're moving closer to Vaisesika Prabhu, and so his bhakti shakti, his energy of devotion is more immediate, and that's why you get that added benefit when you sit closer. And so, but Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and others recommend to chant with people who have taste. And by chanting in their association, it will be easier for you to fix your mind on the sound of Krishna's holy name and actually call out to Krishna. And many of us have experienced this, like just a simple example. Ritadvaja Swami and I would be chanting japa. But then when we would chant, this is for example, he would stay with me in Santa Barbara. So when we would chant together, we would both feel that our chanting improved by chanting together. And then sometimes a third god brother would be there, like once it was Girihari Swami. So then when he would join us, then we'd feel like a further boost in our chanting. And then another time Jayadwaita. So that's another secret, to chant in the association of devotees who have taste, and in as close proximity as possible. And it actually has very good effects. Chanting in front of the deities, Radha Kalachandji, such beautiful deities. He's Naimisharanya Das is in Dallas, and in front of Tulsi Devi, and so yeah, there's every hope. Hare Krishna.
I have a verse from the Padma Purana that addresses his question right directly on the nose. And I think we have to look it up. It's Namapa Yuktanam Namamevya Agamyaham Harantyagam. Then the rest?
Avishvani Prayuktani Tamye Varta Karanicha.
Yeah, this is very important, because what this is saying is that the chanting is meant also for offenders. And that sounds startling. It's for offenders? Yes, in the sense that if you're an offender, the only thing that's powerful enough to remove the offense is the holy name. So if you keep chanting, then the holy name will remove your offenses. By chanting again and again and again and not stopping, the offenses will be removed and your chanting will become pure. I mean, it may take a longer time. You don't want to purposely make offenses and think it's okay and then keep chanting like that, offensively. But it's a fact that the holy name is powerful enough to remove the offenses. Therefore, we should continually chant and not stop under any circumstance.
Rupa Goswami therefore says that one should be patient. Going on with the practice, and I had a practical application of this because I'm taking lessons from Akinchana Krishna Prabhu, and he's very patient with me, but I'm not patient with myself oftentimes. And he was teaching me something that was particularly hard for me to get. And at one point I said, well, generally how long does this take to get this particular sound? And he said, it's kind of, it comes by Krishna's grace. He said, you just keep trying and then all of a sudden you'll start doing it. And I could really relate to that it has to descend. And in the practice of chanting also, I'm just relating to what both of the Maharajas were saying about continuing to take the medicine or continue to practice and wait for grace to descend. Don't try to force your way into it. You can't force taste, but taste bestowed by Krishna on those he chooses. So sit there and wait and just be patient and be submissive to when it might come down. And it may not come all at once. It may come in tiny little molecules. In other words, after one finishes chanting 116 rounds and doing it dutifully rather than with taste, one may then walk away and then feel that one has a slightly different perspective on the world, or has just enough, has the wherewithal to withstand the influence of the lower senses. And one may think, where did that come from? And then one may come to the point of realizing, oh, that came from my chanting. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayashuvairagyam Jnanam Chayara Haitukam. That just by this direct process of devotional service, one gets ragya as concomitants. And even if one gets a tiny trace of Krishna's mercy, Lord Brahma says, Supadamulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya. No, wrong verse. It's I'm sorry. Atapite deva padambuja tvaya prasado eshanugrahita eva. Janati tadvam bhagavan mahimno nachanya eko picharam bachinvan. And that is that if you get a lesha, it's a molecule, practically imperceptible, just a trace of Krishna's mercy, then you can begin to understand him. In fact, understand everything about him just from a tiny, tiny bit. And those couple of ideas I just wanted to tie in because it's something in which we don't have complete control. Even Narada Muni, when he had left home and gone into the forest and was practicing whatever he had been taught by those sages, and then he had a profound experience. His senses were all independently engaged in serving Krishna, and he was feeling unbounded ecstasy, floating in an ocean of bliss. And then suddenly he came back into his body and awareness of his bodily existence. And then he mechanically tried to get it back, that experience he tried to get back. And Krishna spoke to him in an unembodied voice and said, "You're a ku yogi, you're a bad yogi." Bad yogi. He said, "You're attached to the mode of goodness, you haven't come to the perfectional stage yet. And now throughout your life, you can work for this. And it's not something that you get mechanically." It's nice to keep in mind that it doesn't come just because I put in so many hours or whatever, but by Krishna's mercy. Perhaps one can be more patient and just wait for it to happen. But one thing's important is to continue hearing. You have to have Sambandha Gyan, Haridas Thakur said, while you're chanting. Because every day the mind must be convinced of one's, or reconvinced of one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And also, as the Shastra says, Tasmat ekena manasa bhagavan sattvatam piti shrotavya kirtitavyascha dhyaya pujascha nityada. There really is nothing else to do. You have no other duty except to give one-pointed attention to this. So feel free to give your full attention to the process of hearing and chanting. Even if you can't do it perfectly, you should know or convince your mind there's nowhere else to go. There's no other alternative than this. And that actually helps. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Nam bina kichu nahi ko aro choda bhuvana maje. There's nowhere else to go in the 14 worlds. What to speak of Home Depot, which is the worst place on earth. Shri Shri Radhan Manon Mohan Ji ki jai, Shriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Shri Lakshmi Nrsingadev ki jai, Gop Premanande Hari Hari Bo.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.